My name is John Viehe. Welcome to Chautauqua People. My guest today is Stephen Osgood, serving in his first year as General and Artistic Director of the Chautauqua Opera Company. Stephen, where did you spend your childhood?
I grew up in the suburbs of New York City, Long Island, Putnam County, Westchester. I always felt like I was kind of spinning around, waiting to finally land in New York City. Went to school in Madison, New Jersey, so that was like the big spiral, and then finally into New York City, and lived in the city for a good 20 years or so.
Right. And what did your parents do for an occupation?
My dad's a Methodist minister, was retired now, and my mom is just as active in the church as he was. It was we essentially like lived in and around the church. But so we moved around a lot. That was a lot of the reason why we moved, because it was only 3, 4, 5 years in each town, and it's how the Methodist church worked.
And you get reassigned by the bishop, don't you?
Yep.
You say, yes sir, we're going.
Are you going there?
Okay, and that's it. Now, how did you develop an interest in opera?
It came relatively late, especially to my, compared to colleagues of mine. I had wanted to be in the theater. I wanted to be an actor, a designer, a director, and had really never listened to opera. We had a lot of music in the house, but not a lot of opera, and really no opera growing up. And so it was once I was finishing my undergrad degree in theater, and came across in a music history book Richard Wagner and his Gesamtkunstwerk, his complete work of art. And it was the first time that I heard of this thing that combined all of the arts that were so important to me. I had always played the piano, I had always sung. Turns out I had conducted when I didn't know that it was something that I would end up making a lifetime out of. And of course all of the theatrical side of things. And so that really sparked my interest. I did a lot of reading, started to go to things when I was in New York, and was fortunate. I was working with an experimental theater company at the time, the Irondale Ensemble, and they needed a music director for the first time. I could kind of step into that role and experiment with things. And so as I was discovering what opera was and how that musical language could work theatrically, I had a chance to play with non-singers, or certainly non-music readers, but skilled collaborators and improvisation actors. So I had a chance, a few years where I could torture them and explore opera, and then eventually decided, you know what, I think I have to go off and put my money where my mouth is and try to do this thing.
So what was your formal education in opera?
Not much. I came out of those 5 years with the Irondale Ensemble, and I look back at it and I laugh at myself, which is why I try to tell the story as much as possible, because it was silly. I thought, well, if you're going to be a conductor, then you have to go to the Juilliard School. And so I applied to the Juilliard School to get into the master's conducting program. I had absolutely no formal, certainly not in my undergrad program, musical training. Right. So they must have just laughed themselves silly when they saw my application, and I got nowhere with it. And after getting that rejection and being deflated, then I thought, well, okay, I guess I just have to go off and do it. So I started working. It was fortunate my sister was going to Dartmouth in New Hampshire, and there's a summer opera company there, Opera North, and I got an apprenticeship there, apprentice coach position one summer, and that was the very beginning of a network of colleagues and friends and mentors who would eventually kind of help me build my career. First of all, showing me what it was that I didn't know yet. And so saying, oh, well, you need to study these languages, you need to study this repertoire, you need to study this style. And that's all stuff that if you find individuals, you can do privately. And so I kind of cobbled together a private education while working full-time in the field and clawing my way up the ladder.
As much like people used to read law before going to law school.
And in some ways, I think it's a European model of building a career. You work in the small houses, and you work then, leapfrog up to bigger houses. I would play for a small house, and always make sure that they knew that I wanted to conduct. And then eventually they would say, oh, well, why don't you take the 10th performance of this opera that we're doing? And I would get some experience and it would go well. And so they would give me more. And then I would leap over while I was doing that and start working for the next up company and play there. And little by little kind of zigzag to...
And made your way up.
Made my way up.
What were some of the other places you stopped along the way?
After Dartmouth, I went to Lake George. I spent 3 summers up at Lake George Opera. That was before they went to Saratoga. In New York City, one of the places, a dear place that I cut my teeth, learned so much, was the Amato Opera. Tiny little place on the Bowery, right next to CBGB's, 108 seats, including a balcony. It was essentially it was a storefront. And they built this tiny little opera house, a little Italian, Tony and Sally Amato. And Tony just lived and breathed Italian opera. So I spent several years there playing for him and just soaking up as much as I could. There I learned an awful lot about Italian style there. And then kind of on the flip side, I was working with American Opera Projects, which is a small company in Brooklyn. They're now, gosh, I think in their 30th year. This was now 25 years ago, so it was kind of in the infancy of the company. I was a freelancer there, then I was music director, and then artistic director of the company from 2001 to 2008. The American Opera Projects their sole mission is to develop new works with living composers and librettists. And so the combination of my experience in theater, contemporary theater, where new works is the given. It's not surprising. You're always working on new plays. Well, I went into AOP with that mentality, where so many of my colleagues now, this is now 2 decades ago, that was not what was going on all the time. So I was one of a small handful of conductors who felt comfortable in the development process, felt comfortable talking to librettists and composers about how the pieces could grow through workshops, through development, and revisions. So that language served me really well. And that collaboration with the association with AOP has been critical throughout my life, and I still work with them. Right.
And so that was a series of jobs and assignments that allowed you to self-select your way into significant skills.
It's certainly, it built on skills that I had. Contemporary music, I'm a good mathematician, I can count, I can keep time, I can keep track of things, I keep calm. And so the challenges of contemporary scores are things that I'm not scared of. And so I had a chance to really cut my teeth on them, develop those skills, and now, partly through the work of American Opera Projects and other companies like it, American Opera is in the infancy of a golden age. So the timing of my coming into this career and where American Opera is now is fortuitous.
Wonderful. How did you make your way to Chautauqua?
Oh my gosh. Well, I had known Jay Lessinger for many years, my predecessor here, stage director, and I would conduct at Juilliard or Manhattan School regionally. He would come to see my work, and was a fan. I was a fan of his work. I would see his productions, and we would always have these conversations afterwards and say, well, we should work together. Let's do something together. Now, I didn't have a company. I couldn't hire him, but he had a company where he could hire me. Eventually, those conversations just kind of built, and in 2009, I was invited up here as a guest conductor for a production of Tosca. That went well. Let's see, and I think it was then 2 years later, Jay asked me to come back and conduct the Opera Highlights concert that the company does with the Chautauqua Symphony.
Got it.
This year's version of it we just did 2 nights ago now.
Indeed.
And that was, actually his goal with that concert was to do a program that was all contemporary American opera. Opera Highlights. And so he said, well, let's bring Steve in for that.
That's right.
That went well. I kept coming up for those concerts. I came back up in 2013 to conduct Peter Grimes in addition to the concert. and then Ballad of Baby Doe in 2014. So I had a long, relatively long time knowing what Chautauqua is, what the institution is, how it works, how the company fits into the infrastructure, the combination of all the arts organizations that overlap there. I had time to soak that in. So then when the position became open, I threw my name into the ring and came up last summer for the interviews, and here I am.
And you knew what you were getting into, clearly.
I could speak with experience about the role of opera already at Chautauqua, the role of opera nationally, where we are in this moment in history, and how I thought that if I were running the company, how we could bring more of what I see it doing nationally into the Chautauqua community and share that.
Wonderful, wonderful. I know we've hired some artistic people in the past, and it's not always been a good fit. People had expectations that couldn't be met, and so this is wonderful. You've had that exposure over many years and said, okay, this is good to go. Tell me about the components of the Chautauqua Opera Company.
Well, the main stage season, what kind of people would look at when they see our brochure. The company has traditionally, over the last few years, done 2 main stage productions, one in the amphitheater, one night, and then the second one in Norton Hall for 2 performances.
Right.
That is, when you think of a company, you really think about the productions that they're doing. And one of the things that I knew about Chautauqua Opera in particular was that there is a vast amount of activity that is going on peripherally. And it was easy for me, even 5 years after I'd been here for the first time, to lose track of that. To think, oh yeah, Chautauqua, 2 productions in the summer. When in fact, it is around 36 different performances in the course of our 6-week season.
Got it.
So that was a big thing that I wanted to make sure we learned, we started to talk about differently. In terms of the company's structure, we have, for each of our main stage productions, we'll bring in around 3 guest artists. These are stars who sing all over the country, all over the world. Some of them familiar to the Chautauqua audience, others newcomers to the Chautauqua community. Those will be our big principal roles. So we did Traviata in the Amp. So that was, so the Violetta was Caitlin Lynch making her debut here. I had met her at the Metropolitan Opera a few years ago, and she's just luminous. She's a magical singer. Our Alfredo was Dominic Armstrong, who is familiar to Chautauqua because he sang with Marlena Malas's voice program for many years. And so then he's been off. I've worked with him all over the place. He's been off building a great career, and then I was able to bring him in to sing his first full Alfredo and to make that jump into the professional company at Chautauqua. And then the father, Giorgio Germont, was Todd Thomas, who was a young artist with the Chautauqua Opera back in the 1980s and has been a regular returner as a guest artist, and in fact was the Scarpia in my first production here, in my Tosca. So I think with those 3 guest artists, we got the triangle, of what we can do with this company. Graduate people from the training program and bring them onto the main stage. Nurture with Todd, our young artists, and have them coming back year after year as guest artists, and then bring in somebody who is magical and is new to the community here.
Tell me about the training programs.
Well, we have a very robust young artist program, and it took me a while to get this straight. There's 2 tiers in it. There's an apprentice level and a studio level. The studio level tends to be slightly younger than the apprentices. We have 16 this year. They are all either just finishing or have recently finished their graduate degrees. So they are
the studio artists.
The studio artists. Yep. They have so they have lots of experience. And they're just, and training, they're well-rounded singers. And now just in the beginning stages of building a career.
And what's the basic graduate degree for most of them?
Masters.
A master,
yeah.
Master of Arts, and
Yeah,
some
or
good.
music, probably.
We think of a DMA for the instrumental musicians. Is that commonly done for?
It can be. It's interesting for singers. They will need to, if they want to teach, they'll need a doctorate.
Right.
And so you'll see singers who kind of cycle into the profession after they finish their masters, work for a few years, and then there's a decision-making process for them. Do they go back to school, get that doctorate, and go into teaching? Do they go back to school, get that doctorate because it affords them the opportunity to study more and then go back into the professional world? Or do they just stay in the professional path and not go back to school?
Got it.
And then some of them, they're back 20 years later getting their doctorates so that they can go and teach, or they've just have built a big enough name for themselves that they can go
Teach on the basis of that.
And
exception.
yep.
Exception. I know where I hold an appointment, it's Board of Trustees is absolutely clear. If you're around for very long, we want a terminal degree. Otherwise, you're not going to be here. And that's
right.
No debate. Okay.
So those are our studio artists.
Right.
We have 16. And these are kind of good round numbers because with 16 you can have 4 sopranos, 4 mezzos, 4 tenors, and 4 baritones, basses.
Right.
And since they will be the chorus in our shows, then you want to have that even blend of voices available.
Right.
We do a similar thing with our apprentices. We have 8 apprentices this year. Again, kind of 2 sopranos, 2 mezzos, 2 tenors, 2 low voices. And that's a union contract.
Okay.
AGMA is the union, and they will, the combination of things is a little bit different for them. They will sing the comprimario roles, the supporting roles in the main stage productions. They will be the understudies for the guest artists.
Right.
Because if Caitlin Lynch had gotten sick the day of our Traviata, we couldn't cancel it.
Got it.
So, so we have a cover who was ready to go if that happened. And then they also are featured on these 2 concerts that we do with the Chautauqua Symphony. So our opera highlights that we just did on Saturday featured, we gave really nice plum assignments to those 8 apprentices. And then on August 6th, at the end of our season, we have our Opera Pops concert.
I saw that program. It was wonderful.
Yeah,
It's
thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you. We
Tell
had a
me what's
great time.
coming up the rest of the season.
Well, next main stage production is The Mikado by Gilbert and Sullivan. It is a production that originated at Opera Theater of St. Louis a few years ago, directed by my dear friend Ned Canty, one of my absolute favorite directors to work with. It is an updated version of the operetta. He wanted to capture, there was this fascination at the time that they wrote The Mikado. In fact, it's why they wrote The Mikado, that England was incredibly fascinated with Japan. But what people don't realize is that Japan was equally fascinated with England. And so there are these pictures of Japanese people in full-out Victorian garb with full bustles and carrying parasols.
Yeah.
So it was a two-way street there. That was the fascination. Now, of course, they wanted to make fun of the culture. They didn't want to make fun of Japan. They wanted to draw on this culture and use it to make fun of themselves, because it's all British jokes.
Right.
So they made up a fictional land, Titipu. And by kind of giving themselves that silly liberty, they could just run wild with it.
Let's see your graphic for this.
Well, so this is what, so Ned's production takes the piece and updates it to contemporary America and Japan, because we have a similar thing going on with movies and video games and whatnot. So there's all these video games and manga and anime references in the production. And so in one of our first days of rehearsal, the little maids from school got to decorate their school notebooks with stickers.
Wonderful.
They were sitting on the floor decorating, and then I felt very left out because my score looked very undecorated. So I gave it to our stage management team, and they gave me a nice maestro, and there may be a certain kind of Japanese lizard figure that shows up in the production, and we get the 3 little princess maids and some crab face on that guy and a unicorn. So now I feel like I'm really up to speed with this production.
You made the team standard.
Yes, right, exactly.
Okay. I I want to talk for an hour here, but they're not going to let me do it. But
Okay.
I've got some good questions. Let's talk about contemporary opera.
Well,
Now,
good, because you asked me about what's coming up.
You bet.
And the third title, I said that we traditionally do 2 titles.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we have a third one this year. We're collaborating with the Logan Chamber Series to do a performance of Song from the Uproar by Missy Mazzoli and Royce Vavrick. This is a piece that premiered in New York in 2012.
Right.
And I was fortunate to conduct it there. It had a big stage production. We've successfully done the piece in concert, though, a couple times. In a very theatricalized concert, because there's a film element that was generated even while the score and the libretto were being written. So there is a visual language that's woven into the piece. So what we do, it's a chamber opera, which is why it fits well for Logan. It was written for the Now Ensemble, which is an existing group that came, they've been on the scene for about 10 years now. It's flute, clarinet, bass, piano, and electric guitar.
Right.
That's the instrumentation.
Wonderful.
And then a 5-voice vocal ensemble, and it's
Wonderful.
perfect for my studio artists.
Wonderful.
And then Abby Fisher plays the lead role of Isabel, and she was also in Marlena's program. So she's familiar to Chautauqua as well. Again, so things come together in this. So we're doing it one night, August 8th, in, actually not even a night, in the afternoon at 5 o'clock in Norton Hall.
Okay.
So for me, again, in that effort to take what is thriving in opera right now and all of the new pieces that are being written, that is as equal a part of the operatic experience now as Traviata or Don Giovanni is, or the
Right.
Mikado.
Right.
And so the ability in my first season to have those 2 big main stage shows, Traviata and Mikado,
Right.
but then anchor it with something that is recent
Right.
and will speak in a whole different way, because the musical language, just the instrumentation and then the way it's put together it's showing how opera is alive and thriving.
Right.
Because that's not necessarily the rap it gets sometimes.
Got it.
So I feel I'm thrilled that we have a third title this year. We've announced that we will have 3 titles next year as well,
Wonderful.
and so we'll have another contemporary piece
I
next
hope
year.
you do it that same way. Okay, couple terms. You touched upon one of them, and we're going to have a little quick drill here.
Okay.
Pretend we're in the Army.
Okay.
Chamber opera, what is it?
Small.
How long? How many actors? What's the or performers? What's the motivation?
I think for you to say chamber, you probably have to be 12 or under in terms of the instrumentation, and probably similar. One of the big things about opera is there a chorus?
Right.
Is it a chorus show? Because
Okay.
as soon as it is, it's big.
It's big.
So chamber operas probably don't have choruses, or maybe they have a vocal ensemble like Song from the Uproar.
Okay. Tell me about HD opera.
You mean the video,
Got it.
the video from the Met and other companies?
Other companies.
I think it's great. I've been to a number of them. I've worked on the other side of them at the Met when they were broadcast. I think any chance that people have to go to the opera is a win-win situation for everybody.
Right.
It's an incredibly different experience, though. 2 things that are vastly different, and I find it frustrating sometimes when I go to an HD performance, because I find it's really easy to lose track of what the big stage looks like.
Got it.
You go from close up, medium shot, close up, and I realized after like 10 minutes, I was like, I have forgotten where these people are on the stage. And that is part of the live experience.
Right.
You are choosing where you're going to look.
Right.
And so not everybody gets to sit in the first 10 rows of the Metropolitan Opera House.
Right.
In fact, 98% of them don't.
Right.
So the unique experience that HD opera offers you to be able to see things close up and see that these are real live human beings performing this is
Right.
great.
Right.
You lose something by losing the big theatrical experience, and the other thing that you lose, and it's what we have to keep returning to, not to say don't do the HD operas, but then go into the opera house, because that's the only place that you'll actually be hearing it unamplified.
Okay.
It's being captured by the cameras and coming through speakers to you in the theater. And when you're in the opera house, it's coming out of their throats, and it's sound waves going through air, and there is absolutely nothing like that.
Different quality. Okay, another term I heard today, a new one, opera invasion. What is it?
Opera invasion is one of the new things that I brought here. I was looking at our season and saying there are these times. There was when I was here for my interview, I learned that there are 29 pocket parks on the Chautauqua Institution grounds.
Okay.
The news to me. And I thought, wow, how interesting. We could do an event, an outdoor event in each of those pocket parks. That could be our thing. And the logistics of that and just the scale of it and even identifying what they are, it wasn't a good idea, but it was a kernel.
Right.
Again, having been at Chautauqua for a number of years as a guest, knowing how things work and how the weeks break down, what we decided to do was a series of invasion events.
Okay.
Not opera in our theater.
Right.
Invading the grounds.
Great.
Mostly outside.
Great.
All outside? All outside. All with different goals. One a week. So that way, at least if somebody comes for 1 week, we know that there is an invasion event that week available for them. 2 of them have been, or will be, we're halfway through the season now, an effort to share with the audience by showing them, the community, how athletic opera is.
Good.
What a gymnast. It's an Olympic sport.
Right.
It just is music.
Right.
So we did a competition with the Boys and Girls Club, 425 kids broken down into teams, called So You Think You're Louder Than an Opera Singer.
Okay.
And we brought them out to the baseball field. I taught them 4 short phrases from Traviata, and then we had 36 semifinalists duking it out on the fields and screaming, singing, just being loud, but a chance to say, oh, that's what it means.
Right.
That was the Thursday morning before our Traviata performance, which was Saturday night.
Right.
So yes, I mean, we were plugging Traviata, of course.
Right.
But more than that, we were teaching them how to listen to the singers when they came to the show on Saturday. And there were 4 little Easter eggs for them, because when Si Attenti al Cantor happened just before the Brindisi, you know that there were 400 kids out there going, I know that phrase.
Yeah, that's great.
And that wanted to stay all the way until Violetta's Gioia at the end, because that was one of the other ones. So events like that, we've done a couple out in front of the amphitheater where we show people what it means to have an audition book ready.
And this is a perfect week, I hope. Thursday night, CPOA picnics. Send a crew to Lincoln Park if you haven't planned it already.
Oh, okay.
Target of opportunity, be several hundred people in there between 5 and 7 for a picnic. And fantastic.
Well, in February, when I was up here for some meetings and we were just cooking on things, on ideas, and I just kept having more and more ideas, and I said to myself out loud, I said, Steve, no more ideas for 2016.
Got it.
2017.
Some more.
And so I've had lots of ideas since then. I was like, nope, that's a 2017 idea.
Got it.
So 2017.
Got it. Okay. I got one more question. We're out of time. These guys indulge me, and I can't help but ask it. Some big opera companies are in trouble. Others are doing real well. What's the difference? What do we see coming for the future for Chautauqua?
Wow. Well, Chautauqua Opera is doing great. So the big companies who have big challenges in front of them, I don't discount those at all. They need to, I think they need to do a version of what we're doing, what Opera Philadelphia has done, what Fort Worth Opera has done. There are small, medium, and large companies across the country who are doing really well. For whom the ticket to be in the opera house on any given night is a coveted prize.
Wonderful.
And so and what each of those companies has done, and I think what we are going to be doing in the upcoming years, is just bringing our audience along. Opera is thriving. It's full of young, exciting, vibrant people who are giving their lives to do this. The repertoire is, there are masterpieces and there are new masterpieces being written now. It's just a churning cauldron of activity. We're going to be showing that to the Chautauqua Opera, to the Chautauqua Institution.
Got it.
Because these people, everybody here, and I think even in the region here, people are curious about things.
You bet.
So we're just going to say this is what opera is. It's not that dying art form. It's not that, oh, we can't get tickets sold. That's other people's problems. What we've got living, breathing, thriving opera. It's exciting. So why don't you come over and see it?
It's terrific. That's
So-
terrific. We're out of time. This has been great fun.
Oh, thanks.
And please do come back.
Oh, I will. Thanks,
I will.
Thanks, John.
And I can't wait to ask you some tough questions in a few years. I got a few more ready to go.
Great.
Okay. Thank you so much. And my name is John V. This has been Chautauqua People. And do come back.